In this video, we're going to talk about all the data you can collect with the Measures app and go deep diving into the results screen. The results screen's been in particularly designed for your clients as much as for you and your team. The reason is we want to enhance the communication, which we found that previous systems out there on the market just don't allow you to communicate the results meaningfully with your patients and clients. Now, you'll see that I've got a session review up here. So this is what you see after you've run a session. You can go back and have a look at all the data and explain that to your patients and your clients. So you'll see initially you've got the notes. This is all been done via voice to text. So I've set up all this and completed these notes using the voice to text function. It works really well and it can save you hours in your week. So I highly recommend, if you haven't used it yet, that you start using voice to text to do your notes. You'll save a lot of time in your week. It'll free it up for some other more important things. Now, we're going to have a look, maybe deep dive first into the Y-Balance test, because it gives us a good overall view of all the features that we'll see across some of the other tests on the results screen. So when you come into the results screen here, you'll see obviously the name of the test there, and then you'll see the different reaches in different tabs across the top of the screen. So you can navigate just by clicking those tabs and have a look at the different data points and metrics for each of those different reaches. In this case, we're just going to have a look at the anterior one, so I've selected that there. Now you'll see on all the results screens, minus the orthopedic tests, and that there's a graph over time. And in this case, we're obviously looking at centimetres of reach for each of those. Now you can see this test has been completed multiple times. As you can see, 4 data points in there. So it's really nice to be able to track that progression over time of the pink being the left leg and the right being and the blue being the right leg. You'll see below the graph, we've got some normative or reference data in there. Now, this is from specific populations in the research, so it's not necessarily going to apply to every single person that walks in through your door, but it's in there as a reference for you to give you a starting point to be able to have some meaningful conversations with the people you're working with. And there's a lot more evidence and numbers in this training portal that you can go through and have a bit of a look and understand the populations that was gathered with this particular data that we're showing in the app. So if you're seeing people who maybe don't fall within the norms, we'll get down to that very shortly. It's not necessarily that they're not at a bad level. It's just that they're maybe not suitable for that population there as well. So unfortunately, we can't put every specific data in. And the research, there just isn't data on every single population out there. But we're hoping with the Measures app that we can help maybe build some of that data and some of that research to help enhance our decision making and get better outcomes for people all around the world. So we've got our normative data there. You'll then see there's a percentage of leg length box. And this is why it's really important to set up your leg length percentage when you create a client, because this is going to be used to automatically calculate a percentage of the reach distance based on the leg length. And so you can see here, you can see the numbers as a percentage of leg length, so 58% and 61% there. And then the little green tabs underneath the data, that's the change since last session. So if you see that in any of the results, that's going to show you what the change has been since the last time you tested them. So in this case, the left leg's gone up 5.5% since last time, and the right leg's gone up 1.7%. Now you'll see there's some little tabs giving you some guidance above that data there, which the left being high and the right being high. And that's because it falls below those norms of 95% of leg length. So obviously they're at 58 and 61% of leg length. When we look at the normative data for the anterior reach, we should be up around that sort of 95% of leg length there. So that's just how you can sort of start to use that data and communicate it. And then obviously below we've then got an asymmetry graph, which is also based on the reference or normative data. So in this case, we can see that greater than 4 centimetres difference is a higher risk of injury. So you can see in this case, they're in the green section on the asymmetry graph because they're 3 centimetres difference. So they're in that lower potential risk, I guess, of injury section there. Again, give you some indication about when you might want to take action with these particular patients and clients that you're working with, and allows us to be able to communicate that really easily to the people we work with as well. So that's a bit of an example of all the different types of data that you may see on the screen. Let's go and have a look at all the different categories so we can get a bit better understanding, I guess. So the aerobic fitness data is quite basic. So you've just got the graph. In this case, we're looking at the time trial for 1 kilometre. So we've got a graph in minutes here. and the change, and showing that sort of change on the graph between those two sessions that have been done. And then underneath the graph, you get your reference value or your recent value for what they did in that particular testing session. If there were some notes done for that, so if you had some written some notes in your test, you'd also see that there as well. So quite straightforward when we look at the time trial. Let's have a look at the agility t-test. So if you're not familiar with all these particular tests, and obviously there's over 400 in the Measures app, this is the training portal is the perfect place, and you've got all of those below. So here in the agility test, you can see that they had 11 seconds on the first one, and then they're at 10.5 on the second session. You can see the recent value there. So it's displayed very similarly to what we saw with the aerobic fitness there. There's not enough normative data in different populations, so we haven't put that in there yet, but you'll see as the app evolves that we've got some grand plans to increase that reference data and make it even more specific to the people that you're working with as well. So we've got something there for you to start based on the best available literature and research that we have to date at the minute, but it's going to get better as we go. If we have a look at the 400 metre run, so an anaerobic based test, again, you can see the time in seconds for that and the change. So obviously this, normally you'd see a decrease and you'd be thinking, well, that's not a good thing. Actually, when we're talking about sort of anaerobic fitness in the 400 metre, obviously the lower we go, the quicker we're getting, the better our anaerobic fitness is, which is fantastic. Now, our anthropometrics, in this case, we're looking at thigh girth. So you can see there's been a little bit of an increase on the left side, and the right's stayed the same. So you can see that graph pretty nicely there. And then you can obviously see the asymmetry between sides. So we know we want to be less than 2 centimetres difference between sides. So that keeps us in the green zone, reference zone there. So now we're going to skip ahead to the weight bearing lunge test, as we've already done the Y balance test, and have a look at that. So you'll see there's some tabs at the top of this screen, which are a little bit different, which we haven't seen so far. And again, this is some reference data or some sort of guides, I guess, compared to normative data. So in this case, we've got the left being average, the right being above. You might also see below as red there as well. So when we look at the norms for this test that we can see below the graph, it's 10 to 12 centimetres. So the left being 12 centimetres is obviously sitting at average, and the right sitting at 17 there. We're sitting above that 12 centimetre norm. We can see that on the asymmetry graph as well. Obviously, there's a big difference between sides there. So given that there is a big difference between sides, we know we want it to be less than 2 centimetres difference. That's potentially indicating that maybe we need to help this client out and take some action to improve those results. Now, there's obviously a big difference there, and there's been a drop since last session, and so this is where we can have a look, which is hidden away, at our pain metric there as well. So it gives us some more context around the data, because if I go back and have a look at that result in 6 months' time, I'm not going to necessarily know why there was a big drop off there, but being able to tap on that and get some context around that and say, okay, this person had 4 out of 10 pain, and they've sprained their ankle in that sort of week, that potentially explains that results in data too. You can also then compare, post, exercise or post treatment, exactly what the changes are due to. So maybe you decrease the pain, and then we see that range of motion increase significantly. It gives us some more context around our decision making and what we're doing with the people that we work with. So that's a really neat feature, and that's hidden in all the graphs there. When we have a look at our orthopaedic test, in this case we're looking at the anterior draw test of the knee. It's a simple negative, positive, or unsure. Okay, so that's going to display there, and you'll see each of the testing results there displayed over time. You'll also see the notes, which again have been added in there using voice to text, which is really quick and easy. When you have a look at the prone heel to butt test, our flexibility test, it's displayed very similarly to the weight bearing lunge test. So in this case, obviously you can see some big changes in that graph over time. Both are sitting in the average zone. We know the average we want it to be sort of 2 centimetres from your bottom. Okay, so in this case, there's no asymmetry there, and they fall into the average zone in regards to norms. So again, really easy, quick to visualise through there. We have a look at our speed test. In this case, a sprint test. It's displayed very similar to those aerobic and anaerobic tests, where you've got your graph over time, and you've got your recent values in there. There is some normative data in there as well. When we have a look at our endurance test, so something like a single leg wall sit, again, we get those reference tabs at the top there comparing to norms, and we get the asymmetry graph there, again, telling us maybe whether we need to take action with that individual. So these are just guides, as we said, to put in there to help your decision making and when you may do something. So not every person will fit into these populations, but it's a good guide to start from, and it will only get better over time. When we have a look at our isometric test, so obviously this is using our muscle meter, again, you'll get a nice graph over time of those reference points and what happened in that session. You'll see the asymmetry percentage there. So in this case, we can see the raw figures being 62 and 60 kilos, which is 3% difference. We know we want to be less than a sort of 10 to 15% difference there. So that's what falls into those different orange and red zones. And then we can see as a percentage of body weight and compare to norm. So we can see our normal knee extension should be 60 to 74% of body weight in the populations that we've used for that reference data. And so in this case, we're seeing 90 and 93% of body weight. So both of those are showing as above average there. And we can see since the last session that we tested, the left side's gone up 50% and the right side's gone up 24%. So really clear for your clients to see exactly what's happened since last session and the effectiveness of what you're doing and working with them to keep them engaged in the process to reach their long-term goals. Our last category that we'll look at is sort of for our rep testing, which is looking at the single leg hamstring raise endurance. So in this case, we can see our sort of reps that we've done there, and we can also see the percentage difference between sides there as well. And obviously that's falling below the normative range. So that's where you see those red tabs, reference tabs above. And also they're falling to the red with the asymmetry because we want that to be less than 10% difference there side to side. So it gives you some nice reference data too. I've just realised that I've forgotten one in here, so I'm going to go and have a look at the 1 rep max. So I skipped past that one, which again is a single leg extension, similar to what we did with the muscle meter for the isometric strength. But in this case, we've got the 1 rep max calculator built in. So you can use a leg extension machine in a gym environment and perform a number of reps, and then you can put the weight in for that particular test. And then what our app will do, we'll do a calculation of 1 rep max, and you can see that down in the asymmetry graph and in the 1RM box down the bottom, where they've been able to generate 55 kilos on the left, 58.3 kilos as their 1RM on the right. So they've moved, in this case, probably something around 50 kilos for 2 to 5 reps there. Okay, and we can see the asymmetry between sides for their 1 rep max is 5.7%. So falls less than that 10% difference. So again, without having to get a rep max calculator out, it's all done for you, and it allows us to standardize those differences. I know for me that was one of the big things. I've always loved machine-based testing, so things like the single leg press, single leg extension, leg curl, calf raises. But being able to get some normative data was often, and be able to compare over time in previous sessions was really difficult. So being able to calculate the amount of reps, utilising the weight, and then being able to check that over time is a really useful thing to be able to do with your patients and clients there. So that's gone through all the different tests and the results screen there. Hopefully that gives you a little bit better insight into it, and we'll go more specifically into these as we go through the different tests in the training portal.